The story begins in 1915 when two young men are sent to a correctional facility called Bastoy. This is not an ordinary prison. It is a place designed specifically for children and teenagers, labeled as troubled by the state. Bastoy sits on a remote island about 75 miles from Oslo, surrounded entirely by water. Security there is minimal, not because of neglect, but because escape is almost impossible. Before being placed in their dormitory, the two young men are brought before a man named Bruthen, the strict and disciplined supervisor of the facility. He briefly explains the rules that govern life in Bastoy. After that, all personal belongings are taken away, and their identities are stripped down to numbers. From that moment on, they are known only as C5 and C19. Their hair is cut short, and they are washed as part of the process of entering prison life. Later that afternoon, C19 is summoned to the office of the prison director, Bastoy. There, he receives a serious warning. The authorities have reports linking him to a murder case. Because of this, Bastoy makes it clear that C19 must follow every rule without exception while inside Bastoy.
Roten! Du kan gå nu.
To ensure that happens, a trusted inmate named C1 is assigned to watch over him and explain how things work inside the prison. The next morning, the familiar routine begins. All inmates line up to receive their daily work assignments. Some are sent to the fields to tend crops, while others are placed in the kitchen to help prepare meals. That day, C19 is assigned to clean the toilets, with C1 working beside him. As they work, they begin to talk. C19 seems strangely calm and uninterested in his surroundings. In a casual tone, he even says that he will not be in prison for very long. C1 immediately understands what he means. He calmly explains that no one has ever escaped from Bastoy in the past 6 years. He adds that the only possible way out would be by using a boat stored in a small shed not far from the prison grounds. That shed, however, is always locked and strictly off limits. Instead of feeling discouraged, C19 becomes even more curious. Without hesitation, he runs off on his own to see if the story's true. When he reaches the shed, he finds that the boat is real, but his curiosity quickly turns into a mistake. As he tries to return, several guards surround him. As punishment, C19 is publicly whipped, a harsh reminder of the discipline enforced at Bastoy.
Men. Hold i ro.
That night, when the prisoners are supposed to be resting, chaos breaks out.
Klokka mi. Husvar!
C5 causes a disturbance after realizing that his belongings have gone missing. Bruthen quickly arrives and identifies the culprit without hesitation.
Hjelp meg. Opp. Takk, husvar.
The boy is scolded in front of everyone and sentenced to stand upright all night as punishment. It is not just discipline, but a clear message that every violation will come with consequences. And in that moment, every boy on the island understands what this place truly is. This is King of Devil's Island. The next day, tensions rise even higher. This time, C19 becomes the target. As he prepares to clean himself, another inmate blocks his way. His temper snaps almost instantly. Without hesitation, he lashes out until the other boy can no longer fight back. Outside of their work duties, the inmates are also required to attend religious classes. During these sessions, each boy must take turns reading aloud in front of the others. When it is C19's turn, he freezes. He stands there in silence, unable to continue. The moment nearly turns humiliating, but C1 steps in quickly and saves him from further embarrassment. It soon becomes clear that C19 cannot read. This truth surfaces again when he receives a letter and struggles to understand its contents. C1 reads it aloud for him. The letter turns out to be from Elsa, C19's younger sister. The following day, as C19 heads toward the dormitory, he discovers that his letter has become the subject of mockery, this time at the hands of C9. His anger explodes once again, and a fight breaks out. Because of the incident, C19, C9, and C1, who tried to intervene, are all punished. They are sent into the forest to cut down large trees that will later be used as firewood. The work is exhausting, and the guards only give them leftovers from the other prisoners' meals. Unlike C9, C19 refuses to submit quietly. He deliberately breaks the saw they are using and hides part of it, as if preparing for something ahead. As time passes and they continue working together, the bond between the three slowly changes. C19 and C1, in particular, grow closer. In rare moments between tasks, they begin to talk about their pasts, something almost unheard of in a place as harsh as Bastoy.
Hva skal jeg være?
Allikevel fortsatt den. No.
The next day, they are sent back to the forest once again. The weather turns worse. Heavy rain falls and they are forced to cross a river that chills them to the bone. When break time comes, they once again eat leftover food, just like every other day. Quietly, they begin preparing another plan under the excuse of going to the toilet. They wrap part of the saw blade with bandages, not to hide it, but to protect their hands when the time comes. Around them, life in the camp continues as usual. Everything looks normal on the surface. Still, C1 senses that something is off, especially in C19's behavior. C1 asks him to wait if he truly plans to escape, at least until C1 is released so they can meet again on the outside. C19 does not argue. He simply nods, though it is clear his agreement is not sincere. Not long after, the calm breaks when C5 suddenly screams in pain after cutting his hand with a knife. C1 and C19 rush to help and bring him to the prison clinic. C19 uses the moment to his advantage. While the nurse treats C5's wound, he quietly takes a spare key from the room. Later that night, C9 and C19 meet again in the bathroom. There, they carry out the most dangerous part of their plan. They intentionally eat poisonous mushrooms so they will appear sick and be taken to the clinic. Hours later, the effects kick in. Panic spreads through the dormitory and both of them are rushed back to the clinic. After their condition is treated and the clinic lights are turned off, C19 wakes up and quickly wakes C9 as well. He urges him to leave before anyone notices they are gone, but C19 is still weak and his awareness has not fully returned. In that moment, he realizes he has no choice but to continue the plan on his own. He heads toward the shed and tries to open the door to reach the boat inside. Unknown to him, C5, who had also been in the clinic, follows from a distance. He begs to be allowed to escape together. After weighing the risks, C19 refuses. He does not want to drag C5 into a danger that could end far worse. About an hour later, an alarm cuts through the night. The entire prison wakes up, including the guards. Several of them rush toward the shoreline to search the area. But they are already too late. C19 has escaped the island by boat. The next morning, all the inmates are gathered together. Bastoy stands before them and openly expresses his disappointment. He calls C19 a coward and accuses him of choosing escape over responsibility and redemption. Even so, Bastoy remains confident that C19 will eventually be captured and brought back to Bastoy. Life in the prison slowly returns to its routine. That belief proves true when, the very next day, 2 police officers are seen escorting C19 back to the island. As punishment for his escape, he is sentenced to 20 lashes. The punishment is carried out by C1, who is ordered to do it as a consequence of being considered negligent in the trust placed in him by the prison authorities.
Hendene på bordet. Set, gjør det ordentlig.
After the punishment ends, they rejoin the other inmates who are washing themselves. In that moment, C19 releases his frustration. He confronts C1 for being willing to carry out the punishment, yet remaining silent about the abuse Brothen had inflicted on C5. It becomes clear that Brothen had been abusing C5 for some time, leaving him overwhelmed by shame, fear, and lasting trauma.
Det er lettere for deg å lese meg reglene enn å fortelle bestyreren.
Fortunately, the argument does not escalate into a scene that draws the guards' attention. The pressure eventually pushes C1 to make a difficult decision. He gathers the courage to visit Bastoy and report what Brothen has been doing. Unexpectedly, Besterer believes the report and acts quickly.
C5.
C5 is removed from the dormitory and reassigned to work in the forest. Sadly, the change does not bring peace. In the forest, C5 is placed under the supervision of Bjarne, a man known to be close to Brothen. Instead of finding safety, C5 faces new pressure. He is demanded to pay a sum of money and given a deadline of the next day. Surrounded by fear and desperation, and feeling completely alone, C5 reaches a breaking point and makes the unthinkable choice at sea. A few minutes later, C19 finally realizes what has happened. Together with C1, he rushes toward the shoreline. There they find C5's body floating in the water. They carefully bring him back to land, while the other prisoners are ordered to return to the dormitory.
Undone.
After C5's death is confirmed, Besterer makes an official announcement. He claims that C5 died while attempting to escape. The statement deeply disappoints both C19 and C1, who know the real reason behind C5's decision. Still, they have no power to challenge the version of events being presented. All they can do is accompany C5 on his final journey, then return to their daily routines as if nothing has changed. That afternoon during lunch, C19 sees Brothen and stares at him with burning anger that he can no longer hide.
Setting. C19, setting ned.
The following day, Bastoy summons Brothen to address the report submitted by C1 regarding the inappropriate treatment of C5. During the meeting, Bastoy even threatens to imprison Brothen for life if the accusations are proven true. Brothen, however, refuses to stay silent. He defends himself and claims the report is fabricated. He then issues a threat of his own, saying that if he is imprisoned, he will expose the misuse of prison funds carried out by Bastoy. According to him, a portion of Bastoy's budget has long been used for personal gain, rather than the welfare of the inmates. In the end, Besterer chooses the safer path. He orders Brothen to leave Bastoy temporarily until the situation stabilizes. The prisoners witness his departure and respond with cheers. Brothen is dismissed and will not return to the island. A few days later, the prison enters a period leading up to release. Within a week, several inmates are scheduled to be freed, including C1. As that moment approaches, a central committee arrives at Bastoy to inspect the prison and evaluate the condition of the inmates. One by one, those nearing release undergo health checks and are questioned about what they have learned during their time there. When it is C1's turn, he is asked about reports of mistreatment inside the prison. Before he can answer, Besterer steps in and cuts him off. He claims that the boy who died was troubled and difficult to control. Once again, the truth is silenced before it can be spoken. On the day of release, C1 discovers that Brothen has returned to Bastoy, which immediately reignites his anger.
Så jeg hører dere skal dra.
A guard explains that Brothen was never truly fired, only sent away temporarily to handle matters outside the island. Hearing this, C1 can no longer hold himself back. He turns toward Brothen and releases all of his bottled anger, attacking him without hesitation. Chaos erupts. C19 and C9 rush in to help C1, but they are quickly overwhelmed by the greater number of guards. In the end, all three are captured and taken to the underground isolation cells, a narrow space surrounded by iron bars, known as the harshest punishment in Bastoy. For several days, the three of them remain locked inside the isolation cell. Then one night, C19 manages to break open the bars and quickly frees the other two. The next morning, when Brothen arrives for an inspection, they take a desperate risk. They fight to seize the keys and manage to break out of the isolation room. In the chaos, they even manage to overpower Brothen and force him out of the prison. Other inmates witness what is happening, and the courage shown by C1 and C19 sparks something powerful. One by one, the prisoners begin to resist the guards. Some grab whatever tools they can find, while others take the chance to secure food supplies amid the chaos. The situation quickly spirals out of control. The guards are pushed back and retreat to save themselves. A few struggle briefly before being completely overwhelmed. Brothen is also left helpless after being overpowered by C1 and several other inmates. The noise reaches Bastoy's quarters. Realizing that the prison is no longer under control, he rushes out and attempts to escape. Although some prisoners try to stop him, C19 chooses to let him go. Bastoy manages to board a boat with several staff members and flee the island. For the first time, Bastoy is fully under the control of the prisoners. There are no guards left and no orders being given. For a brief moment, they taste a freedom they had only ever imagined. That freedom, however, does not make them careless. Sean sits inside Brothen's room, thinking about the consequences of what they have done. He knows that even though Bastoy now belongs to them, their time is limited. Help from the outside will come. The next day, C1 and C19 rally the prisoners to open the boat gate and push the boats into the water. But their hope fades the moment they reach the shoreline. A large ship appears carrying armed forces ready to take control. C1 and C19 warn the others to hide, but the soldiers move fast and in overwhelming numbers. The entire island is searched, and one by one, the prisoners are captured and gathered back at the center of the prison. Amid the chaos, C1, C9, and C19 manage to escape into the forest. Once they are sure it is safe, they step out of hiding. C19 notices damaged tracks on the ground, signs that someone had crossed from outside the island, likely over the frozen lake. They decide to attempt the same route. The plan quickly falls apart. Before they get far, C19 hears soldiers shouting. In panic, he runs in the wrong direction and moves closer to the troops instead of away from them. The situation forces the soldiers to act. Meanwhile, C1 and C19 manage to reach the frozen lake. They move carefully, knowing that one wrong step could send them into the freezing water. Eventually, they reach a thin sheet of ice that cannot be avoided. C1 decides to cross first. Step by step, with steady focus, he manages to make it across safely. When it is finally C19's turn to follow, hesitation takes over. He lingers just a moment too long, placing his weight in one spot. Without warning, the ice beneath him gives way, and he plunges into the freezing water below. C1 reacts instantly, fighting with everything he has to pull him back. But the icy water drains C19's strength rapidly, leaving his body weak and unresponsive. Realizing his condition is worsening, C19 understands what must be done. He signals for C1 to let go, knowing that if he holds on any longer, neither of them will survive. With a heavy heart, C1 obeys and continues forward alone, carrying a pain that will never truly leave him.
Brevene var til søstera mi.
C1 eventually makes it across the frozen lake and escapes the island of Bastoy. Months later, he begins a new life, working as part of a ship's crew. One day, as the vessel passes near Bastoy, he looks toward the island in the distance. In that quiet moment, memories of the past return, along with the weight of everything he and C19 endured together. So the moral of the story is that sometimes the kindest hearts suffer the most, and even when freedom is finally reached, the pain of losing someone you tried to save can stay with you forever.